A fancy restaurant, glowing chandeliers, the clink of wine glasses, and a table full of laughter. A family reunion, they called it. Everyone was there, my cousins, aunts, uncles, even distant relatives I barely knew. The air was thick with warmth, stories, and the smell of expensive steak. But me? I was standing on the outside, looking in. They told me with cold smiles, "This table is for family." Not for me. Not for Sarah, the one who didn't quite belong. I stood there, frozen, my heart sinking like a stone in water. The words echoed in my head, not family. After everything I'd done for them, years of support, showing up for every birthday, every crisis, how could they say that? I'd always felt like the odd one out, the cousin who wasn't quite one of us. But this was a knife to the chest. And then, as if the night couldn't get worse, the waiter approached me, his face apologetic. "Ma'am, the bill for the table." He handed me a leather folder with a number scrawled inside, $2,200. I stared at it, my mouth dry. They'd left me with the check. The whole table, 6 courses, wine, desserts, and they'd slipped out, leaving me to pay for a dinner I wasn't even invited to. Was this a mistake? Or was it deliberate? A cruel final twist to remind me I wasn't one of them? My hand shook as I held the bill, anger and humiliation burning in my chest. But something else sparked too. A fire, a plan. They thought they could humiliate me and walk away? Oh, they were wrong. This wasn't the end. This was the beginning of my revenge. So what would you do? Stand there, pay the bill, and let them win? Or would you fight back? Stick around, because this story's about to get wild. Let me take you back to how this all started. To understand why this betrayal cut so deep, you need to know who I am and what this family meant to me. I'm Sarah, 32 years old, and I've spent my whole life trying to fit into the Larson family. Growing up, I was the quiet cousin, the one who didn't share the same last name. My mom married into the Larsons when I was 5, and from the start, I felt like a guest in their world. My stepdad, Tom, was kind but distant, always busy with his real kids, my step-siblings, Claire and Michael. They were the golden duo, charming, athletic, always the center of attention. I was the shy one, the bookworm, the girl who'd rather sketch in her notebook than join their loud family games. The Larsons were old money, the kind of family with a big house, annual ski trips, and a name that opened doors. They weren't cruel, not openly. But there was always this unspoken line. Claire and Michael got new cars for their 16th birthdays. I got a pat on the back for getting straight A's. Aunt Linda, the family matriarch, would smile at me during holiday dinners, but her eyes never quite met mine. "You're so responsible, Sarah," she'd say, like it was a consolation prize. Still, I tried. I showed up to every family event, helped plan reunions, even loaned Michael $500 once when he was short on rent. I thought if I worked hard enough, I'd earn my place. I wasn't just Tom's stepdaughter. I was family. Or so I told myself. Fast forward to last month, the Larsons were planning a big family reunion at La Belle Vie, the kind of restaurant where you need a reservation months in advance. I wasn't invited at first. "It's just for immediate family," Claire texted me. I brushed it off, thinking it was a mistake. I called my stepdad, who hemmed and hawed. "It's a small thing, Sarah. You understand." But I didn't. Not really. I decided to show up anyway. Maybe it was naive, but I thought if I was there, they'd see me. They'd remember I was part of them. I put on my best dress, did my hair, and drove to La Belle Vie, my heart pounding with hope. When I arrived, the hostess led me to their private room. The table was set for 20, covered in white linen with candles flickering. Everyone was there, Aunt Linda, Claire, Michael, even second cousins I hadn't seen in years. I smiled, ready to join them. But Claire stood up, her lips tight. "Sarah, what are you doing here?" she asked. The room went quiet. Aunt Linda cleared her throat. "This table is for family," she said, her voice soft but sharp. "I'm sure you understand." I didn't understand. I stood there, my face burning, as 20 pairs of eyes stared at me. Michael wouldn't even look up from his plate. I mumbled an apology and backed out, my heels clicking on the polished floor. I made it to the lobby before the tears came. That's when the waiter found me. He was young, maybe 22, with kind eyes. "Ma'am, the bill for the table," he said, handing me the folder. I opened it. $2,200. Appetizers, entrees, 3 bottles of wine, desserts, the works. I looked back at the private room, but the door was closed. They were gone. Did they mean to stick me with the bill? Or was it just a careless mistake? Either way, I wasn't going to let it slide. I stood in the lobby of La Belle Vie, clutching that $2,200 bill, my mind racing. Part of me wanted to believe it was a mistake. The Larsons were thoughtless, sure, but this felt personal. I called Claire. No answer. Michael? Straight to voicemail. I even texted Aunt Linda, but all I got was a read receipt and silence. The waiter, his name tag said Ethan, hovered nearby, looking uncomfortable. "Ma'am, I'm so sorry," he said. "They told me you were handling the bill. Who told you?" I asked, my voice shaking. The older woman. She said her daughter would take care of it. Aunt Linda. Of course, I paid the bill. I had to. My credit card groaned under the weight, but I wasn't about to make a scene in front of Ethan, who looked like he wanted to disappear. I smiled tightly, told him it was fine, and walked out into the cool night air. But inside I was boiling. They hadn't just excluded me. They'd humiliated me. They'd made me a footnote in their perfect family story. By the time I got to my apartment, I was done crying. I was angry. I sat at my kitchen table staring at the receipt, and something clicked. I wasn't going to let them win. They thought they could walk all over me. They thought I'd just take it like always. Not this time. I started digging. The Larsons had secrets, every family does, and I'd been around long enough to know where to look. Claire had a side hustle she didn't talk about, something shady involving consulting fees. Michael had a gambling problem he thought no one noticed. And Aunt Linda? She was the queen of keeping up appearances, but I'd overheard enough to know her perfect marriage wasn't so perfect. I wasn't going to confront them directly. That's what they expected. Me begging for an explanation. No. I was going to play their game, but smarter. I needed a plan, something that would hit them where it hurt. Their pride, their image, their wallets. What would you do with a family like that? Let them walk away, or make them face the truth. Let's see how I turned the tables. The next morning, I woke up with a fire in my chest. The $2,200 bill was still on my table, a reminder of their betrayal, but I wasn't going to wallow. I was going to act. First, I called the restaurant and asked for Ethan. He remembered me, the bill lady, he probably thought. I kept my voice calm, friendly. "Can you confirm who told you I was paying?" I asked. He hesitated, but finally said, "The older woman, Linda Larson." She was very clear, so it wasn't a mistake. Aunt Linda had set me up. I thanked Ethan and hung up, my mind racing. This wasn't just about the money. It was about sending a message. They wanted to play dirty? I'd play dirtier. I started with Claire. She'd always been the golden child, the one who could do no wrong. But I'd heard whispers about her consulting business. I did some digging online, using skills I'd picked up from years of being the responsible one. It didn't take long to find her LLC's public records. She was funneling money through a shell company, taking cash payments for services that looked a lot like tax evasion. I saved screenshots, emails, anything I could find. Michael was next. His gambling problem wasn't hard to track. He'd been sloppy, leaving a trail of Venmo payments to shady accounts. I found a forum where he'd bragged about beating the system at a local casino. I saved that too. Aunt Linda was trickier. She was careful, always presenting the perfect image. But I remembered a conversation at a family barbecue years ago where she'd let slip something about her husband, Uncle Richard. He'd been working late a lot, and she'd laughed it off, but her eyes were tight. I hired a private investigator, a splurge, but worth it. Within a week, I had photos of Uncle Richard with someone who definitely wasn't Aunt Linda. I wasn't going to use this information to destroy them, not exactly. I wanted them to feel what I felt. Exposed, humiliated, powerless. But I needed to be smart about it. I needed allies and I needed a stage. That's when I remembered Ethan, the waiter. He'd seen everything that night at La Belle Vie. He'd heard Aunt Linda's instructions. And he'd looked at me with pity, not judgment. Maybe he could help. What's worse than being betrayed? Having your secrets laid bare. Here's how I planned my revenge. I spent weeks planning. Revenge isn't something you rush. It's like cooking a good meal. You let it simmer, let the flavors build, I wanted the Larsens to feel the weight of their actions, but I didn't want to stoop to their level. No screaming matches, no public meltdowns. I wanted something elegant, something that would hit them where it hurt. Their reputation. First, I reached out to Ethan. I found him on social media and sent a message, keeping it light. "Hey, remember me from La Belle Vie? Got a minute to chat?" He responded within hours. We met at a coffee shop, and I told him everything. Not just the bill, but the years of being sidelined by the Larsens. Ethan listened, his jaw tight. "That's messed up," he said. "They come in all the time, acting like they own the place." I asked if he'd be willing to help. Nothing big, just a small favor. I needed someone at La Belle Vie to accidentally leak some information at the right moment. Ethan was in. He'd seen enough of the Larsens' arrogance to want a front-row seat to their downfall. My plan was simple but devastating. The Larsens were hosting their annual charity gala, a big event where they played the part of perfect philanthropists. It was the kind of night where Aunt Linda wore her best pearls, and Claire posted selfies with influencers. This year, I'd make sure it was unforgettable, for all the wrong reasons. I created an anonymous email account and started dropping hints to local bloggers. Nothing direct, just enough to spark curiosity. "Heard the Larsens are hiding something big," I wrote. "Check their finances." I sent the same tip to a few family friends, people who'd always been skeptical of the Larsens' perfect image. Then I contacted a friend who worked at a small event planning company. I asked her to slip some documents into the gala's welcome packets. Nothing traceable to me, just printouts of Claire's shady LLC records and Michael's gambling debts. For Aunt Linda, I went subtler, a single photo of Uncle Richard with his mystery woman, tucked into her program. The final piece was the restaurant. I asked Ethan to accidentally mention the $2,200 bill incident to a gossip-prone regular at La Belle Vie. Word travels fast in their circles. Ever plan something so perfect it gives you chills? This was my moment. But would it work? Let's find out. The night of the gala arrived. I didn't attend. I wasn't invited, naturally. But I didn't need to be there to know what was happening. I'd set the dominoes up perfectly. Now I just had to wait for them to fall. It started small. A blogger posted about Claire's LLC, hinting at questionable finances. Guests at the gala started whispering as they opened their welcome packets. I'd paid my event planner friend to make sure every packet had the documents. By the time dessert was served, the room was buzzing. Claire's face was pale as she excused herself to take a call. Michael wasn't faring much better. His gambling debts were the talk of the younger crowd, who'd always envied his charm. Someone posted a screenshot of his casino forum posts online, and it spread like wildfire. He left the gala early, muttering about misunderstandings. Aunt Linda's moment came last. She found the photo in her program, and though she kept her composure, I heard later that her hands were shaking. Uncle Richard spent the night dodging her questions, and by the next morning, their perfect marriage was the subject of every brunch conversation in town. Ethan texted me updates all night. "It's chaos," he wrote. "They're freaking out." He'd done his part, casually mentioning the $2,200 bill to a regular who happened to be a local gossip columnist. By midnight, the story was everywhere. Larsen family sticks stepdaughter with $2,200 bill after excluding her. The headline was everywhere, spreading faster than I could have dreamed. Social media lit up with comments, some shocked, others gleeful at the Larsens' fall from grace. People who'd once envied their perfect family were now dissecting their flaws. And me? I sat at home, sipping coffee, watching it all unfold. I didn't feel joy exactly. It was something deeper, satisfaction maybe, mixed with a quiet kind of relief. They'd pushed me out, but I'd pushed back harder. The best part was, no one could trace it to me. The anonymous emails, the carefully planted documents, Ethan's accidental gossip. It all looked like the Larsens' own mistakes catching up with them. Claire couldn't pin her LLC mess on me. The public records were real. Michael's gambling debts were his own doing, splashed across forums he'd joined himself. And Aunt Linda? That photo of Uncle Richard was undeniable, snapped by a PI who didn't even know my name. I'd played it clean, surgical, like a chess game where every move was calculated. But I wasn't done yet. The gala was just the opening act. I wanted them to face me, not as the quiet stepdaughter they could ignore, but as someone they'd underestimated. I waited a week, letting the gossip simmer. The Larsons were scrambling. Claire posted a vague Instagram story about tough times and staying strong. Michael went radio silent, probably dodging calls from his casino buddies. Aunt Linda canceled her usual brunch appearances, and I heard she'd hired a lawyer to handle her situation with Uncle Richard. I decided it was time to make my move. I texted my stepdad, Tom, the only one who'd never been openly cruel. "Can we talk?" I wrote. "Just you and me." He agreed, probably out of guilt. We met at a quiet diner, far from the Larsons' usual haunts. Tom looked tired, his usual polished demeanor frayed at the edges. "Sarah," he said, stirring his coffee, "I didn't know about the bill. I swear, I believed him, but it didn't change much. Why didn't you stand up for me?" I asked, my voice steady but sharp. "When Claire and Aunt Linda said I wasn't family, why didn't you say anything?" He looked down, ashamed, and mumbled something about not wanting to cause a scene. That's when I laid it out. I told him I knew about Claire's shady business, Michael's debts, and Aunt Linda's crumbling marriage. I didn't mention my role in exposing them, but I saw his eyes widen. He knew I wasn't bluffing. "I'm done chasing your approval," I said, "but I want my money back. The $2,200, and I want an apology from all of them." Tom nodded, promising to talk to the family. I didn't expect much, but I'd planted the seed. They'd know I wasn't invisible anymore. What would you do in my shoes? Demand a face-to-face showdown, or let the pieces fall on their own? I chose to let the pressure build, and it paid off. 2 days later, I got a call from Aunt Linda. Her voice was tight, like she was forcing every word. "Sarah, we need to clear the air," she said. She invited me to her house, not for a family dinner, but for a conversation. I agreed, but I wasn't going in unprepared. I brought a recorder, just in case, tucked into my purse. When I arrived, the whole crew was there. Aunt Linda, Claire, Michael, and even Uncle Richard, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. The air was thick with tension, like a storm about to break. Aunt Linda started, her tone dripping with fake sincerity. "We're sorry if you felt hurt, Sarah," she said. "If." That word lit a fire in me, but I stayed calm. "Felt hurt?" I said, leaning forward. "You told me I wasn't family. You left me with a $2,200 bill for a dinner I wasn't even invited to. That's not a feeling, that's what you did." The room went silent. Claire shifted in her seat, her usual confidence gone. Michael stared at the floor. Uncle Richard cleared his throat but said nothing. Then I dropped my bomb. "I know about your LLC, Claire," I said. "And your gambling, Michael. And Aunt Linda, I know your marriage isn't what you pretend it is." I didn't mention the gala or the leaks, but I didn't need to. Their faces told me they were connecting the dots. Aunt Linda tried to recover, her voice sharp. "Are you threatening us?" she asked. I smiled, calm as ever. "No," I said. "I'm just done being your doormat. You owe me $2,200 and an apology. A real one." They didn't apologize, not then. But the next day I got a Venmo notification. $2,200 from Aunt Linda. No note, no explanation, just the money. It wasn't everything, but it was a start. I'd made them see me, and that was worth more than the cash. The fallout kept coming. Claire's LLC got audited, and she had to pay a fine that wiped out her consulting profits. Michael checked into a program for his gambling, but his reputation was trashed. Aunt Linda and Uncle Richard separated, and she stepped back from her charity work, too humiliated to face the gossip. The Larson name, once untouchable, was now a punchline. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. I'd taken back my power, and it felt better than any family dinner ever could. I started spending time with people who actually valued me. Friends like Ethan, who'd become a real ally. He invited me to a staff party at La Belle Vie, and for the first time in years, I laughed without worrying about fitting in. The Larsons didn't vanish from my life completely. Claire sent a half-hearted apology text a month later, something about misunderstandings. Michael called once, mumbling about wanting to make things right. I didn't respond. They'd had their chance, and I was done chasing their approval. Looking back, I don't regret a thing. The Larsons thought they could define me, push me out, and walk away. But I showed them, and myself, that I'm more than their labels. Revenge isn't about destruction. It's about reclaiming your power. If you're watching this and feeling like you don't belong, like you're on the outside of someone else's story, hear me. You don't need their table. You don't need their approval. You are enough, and you can write your own ending. The lesson? Betrayal stings, but it's also a wake-up call. Don't let anyone make you feel small. Stand up, fight smart, and take back your story. I did, and I've never felt freer. So what's your story? Have you ever been betrayed? How did you fight back? Drop it in the comments. I'm reading everyone.